And we are live once again here at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia. It's my pleasure to serve as your host for this week's final global webcast, and what a tremendous 4 weeks it's been. Let's make some noise in the house here at Morehouse. Every Friday in April, you may know that we've been honoring Dr. King by remembering his death 40 years ago in 1968. I've been blessed to serve in two capacities, both in the audience like you and then here as your host in front of the camera. And I can tell you that from both vantage points, the ability for us to connect globally with our brothers and sisters around the world is pretty impressive. This is the world house that Dr. King envisioned. Black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Gentile and Jew, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, together sharing ideas, posing questions, learning and living together in peace. But do you know what I think Dr. King would be most impressed with today? It's the wonderful youthful glow that's emanating from our audience today, the positive vibe that's coming from you young folks, our high school and college students from around the globe, as you proudly pull up a chair with us today and take your seat at Dr. King's beloved Worldhouse. Give yourselves a round of applause for being with us today. Now, our focus here today in the Worldhouse is curbing excessive material and shifting from a thing-oriented to a people-oriented society. Now, here's the question. More than ever, civil and human rights, social justice, peace and freedom are all being compromised by excessive materialism and individualistic thinking. So what is the political legacy that Dr. King has left for the hip-hop culture and its generations of people both young and old? Think about it and use that questions and be ready to step up to the microphone in just a few moments. But first, let's revisit the places that we've connected with during our month-long journey. As many of you may know, since you're joining us for the first time, we want you to understand the significance of what has happened during our global webcast here at Morehouse. It's been morning here in Atlanta, Georgia. It's been evening in India and close to midnight in Beijing, China. And in both Kenya and in South Africa, it's been late in the afternoon. Now, although we've been physically separated by many, many miles, multiple time zones, diverse languages, and so on, we have come together as brothers and sisters, each of us around the world from those places, and we have reinvigorated Dr. King's Worldhouse, the power that he dreamed, spoke, and wrote about. And the wonderful tool that made it all possible for us to reach this goal, the Morehouse College Martin Luther King Jr. Collection. Morehouse, of course, as you know, is the custodian for Dr. King's collection, which includes the Worldhouse essay and more than 10,000 pieces of Dr. King's original work. Well, it's now my pleasure to introduce to you the president of Morehouse College and a Morehouse man himself, Dr. Robert Franklin. Give him a round of applause as he comes up.
Thank you, Ray, and good morning to all of you. Welcome to Morehouse College, the place where we produce Renaissance men with social conscience and global perspective. Dr. King arrived at Morehouse College at the age of 15. He walked this campus, sat in our classrooms, he wrote papers here, he published in the school newspaper, and over time, Dr. King, a Morehouse student, became a Morehouse man. At Morehouse, we teach our students to be Renaissance men, well-read, well-traveled, well-spoken, well-dressed, and well-balanced. And so we welcome you to this college that was the incubator for an extraordinary world leader. As we embark upon this final installment of this historic global cast focusing on this wonderful idea Dr. King wrote about, the world house, the notion that we've been forced to live in a house from which we can't escape, and there's all sorts of wonderful diversity within that house. We've got to figure out how to negotiate it with peace. In 1967, Dr. King's final book was titled, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community? I can't think of a more compelling title to focus our attention today. It's my sincere belief that all of us can choose to become leaders in the tradition that Dr. King embodied. Today, as we talk with friends around the world about curbing and shifting from a thing-oriented society to a people-oriented society, we'll focus on Dr. King's political legacy for hip-hop culture and for this generation of young people. young and old, I should say, and I'm excited about what this conversation will reveal. This is Dr. King's message to young people today. Again, we thank Hewlett-Packard and IOCOM for sponsoring this monumental effort, and we thank the University of Florida and the Digital Worlds Institute for making it technologically possible. Again, welcome. Thank you for your time and your participation, and I look forward to seeing and hearing from you again soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Franklin. We're going to hear now from Dr. Walter Fluker, who's the interim director of the Morehouse College King Collection and the executive director of the Leadership Center. Dr. Fluker?
Thank you, Ray, and thank you, colleagues, both here and in Johannesburg. We often say at Morehouse, especially at the Leadership Center, that the leaders of the 21st century stand at the intersection where worlds collide. Different worlds, worlds of meaning, culture, and the kind of challenges that face this new generation of leadership. Question is, how do we negotiate the traffic at these intersections? Yesterday and today, we had conversations with urban intellectuals and academic intellectuals. And the challenge, I think, in many of our communities is how we negotiate these conversations and feel safe and secure in our own worlds, because each world has a major contribution to bring to this new generation of leaders. I would like for us to give a real shout out to Dr. Joycelyn Wilson, visiting professor with us here, who has brought all of these students together to analyze Dr. King's vision of the Worldhouse using hip-hop as a framework. Let's give her a hearty round of applause. These students have also had an opportunity to hold a very intimate conversation with Mr. Clifford Harris, the rapper known as T.I., about his campaign on nonviolence. We'd like to thank these students from Stevenson High School, Mondays Mill High School, Miller Preparatory Academy for Boys, Westminster Schools, the Lovett School, and others. Would you please stand and let us give you a hearty round of applause.
All right.
Thank you. We'd also like to thank the school liaisons who helped to make this happen. Anika Ellington from Stevenson High School, Casey Dix, our own administrator for the Martin King Collection here at Morehouse College, Gabriel Miller, Judy Osborne, Elise Hawkins. Would you please stand? And last but not least, and maybe most importantly, we'd like to extend a very special welcome to Ambassador Andrew Young, host and colleague of the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who is present with us today. Ambassador Young. Today we are also joined again by Mr. Harris, whom we know as T.I. Thank you again for being with us. Finally, let me simply say today is going to be a great conversation as we discuss the idea of curbing excessive materialism and shifting from a thing-oriented society to a people-oriented society. We have several generations represented in this room right now and in South Africa, which is key to fulfilling Dr. King's dream of a world house. Let us all take this as a great opportunity to think clearly and to think long about what this means for us. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Fluker. And as you can tell, we've got a lot of work cut out for ourselves today, but we're going to have fun as we do it, because now that we've all taken our seats at the table here in the Living Worldhouse, we're going to check in to see who will be joining us around the globe. Partnering with us from our neighboring state at the University of Florida Digital Worlds Institute are students from the University of Florida. Let's hear it for the Gators. How y'all doing down there today?
We're doing very well.
Good to have you with us. We'll be checking back with you in a minute. Now we're going to span across the Atlantic to the other side of the world. We're going to go now to South Africa as we continue our global trek to Johannesburg, where students from the Cedar City campus with their questions and comments. Our greetings to you this morning in Atlanta. It's a little bit later there, though. Good morning, afternoon.
So we tried to get some of them up to come uptown to my office where we managed to get a connection. Dr. Landsberg is also on his way. As you know, it's the 14th anniversary of South Africa coming up on the 27th. So it's quite a long weekend, and it's also the end of the day on our side.
All right, thank you very much. Let's give him a round of applause. We're going to work on that connection. As you know, we're doing this thing live. We're doing it by internet, and you know what it's like with your internet at home sometimes. I know what mine's like. It has a mind of its own. Sometimes it's an internet, sometimes it's an outer net, sometimes there's no net at all. Sometimes I get caught in the net. But we keep trying, right? All right. So this may be the last time this year, at least, that I get to say this, and I'm going to make it count. As a matter of fact, let's make it count together for all of us. On the count of three, everybody in the Worldhouse today say, it's good to be in the Worldhouse. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3. It's good to be in the Worldhouse. Let's say that again. Y'all sounded so good to say that together. It's good to be in the Worldhouse. All right, all right, all right. Well, the next 50 minutes, we hope we're going to blow you away. And remember our topic today. You've heard it a couple of times. I'll say it again. Curbing excessive materialism and shifting from a thing-oriented to a people-oriented society. Now, to help us get started, it's my pleasure to introduce to you a man who's already been introduced in the audience, but whose humanitarian efforts have spanned across the globe. Not only has he visited the parts of the world that we have connected with on the webcast today, but he was also a top aide to Dr. King and holds honorary degrees from 60 institutions, including Morehouse College. He's an author, a visionary, father of 4, a grandfather of 6, and also the former mayor of Atlanta, which, you know, was also a pretty big deal when he got that done. Help me in welcoming to the podium Ambassador Andrew Young.
Hello, and it's good to be in the Worldhouse.
Very good, very good. And of course, it's good for you to be a part of this conversation. Your thought of seeing these young folks today as we have this conversation?
Well, I tell you, this is long overdue, and I'm ready for us to get on with it. No holds barred. It's a real world. It's a tough world, and you're going to have to face it, and hopefully face it with love and confidence, understanding, and without violence. And it's possible.
Ambassador, we have a young person that's going to ask you a question from the audience. Young man, step up as you're there and tell us your name and ask your question for Ambassador Young.
My name is Javon. I'm 14, and I go to Miller's Prep Academy. My question is, as someone who worked closely with Dr. King, how can my generation work to curb materialism and achieve his vision of the Worldhouse?
Well, I tell you, Dr. King was just a little older than you when he came to school here at Morehouse. And at that time, his issue wasn't materialism. His issue was how to get an education and how to make it. And one of the things that he did, starting very young, was get a job. And he always, before you can talk about excessive materialism, you've got to learn and be able to take care of yourself. And people don't know, but in the days of Martin Luther King, students from Morehouse used to go up and pick tobacco. And that was by design. I think the Morehouse faculty did not want them to feel that because they were educated and getting the best education in the world, that they were any different from people who had to work in the fields. And they picked tobacco in shade grown. So there was a net, and you had to crawl in the dirt to pick the tobacco leaves. He also worked in a mattress factory. As growing up in the church, getting a little job being the janitor in his church. So I think that Martin Luther King had an appreciation for money. He had an appreciation for work, and he knew how hard it was to come by. he was also living here in Atlanta on Auburn Avenue, where even though his daddy was a preacher and his granddaddy helped found a bank, most of his friends were very, very poor. In fact, one of his best friends he really met when he was trying to take some food out of a garbage can. And Martin met him and invited him home, and he became like a brother to Martin Luther King, and later a very good friend and a friend of mine. So that understanding that you are a part of this Worldhouse, you would never be able to sit down at the table in your house and eat everything on the table and have your brothers and sisters around just watch you eat. You could not be excessively greedy if they were hungry. Well, that's the way we are. We're living in a world where a few of us have too much, and most people don't have anything. And already, you are one of the top 5% leaders of the world, because 75% of the people in the world can't read or write in any language. And when you realize that just by virtue of your education and the opportunities that you have, it puts you at the top of the leadership pyramid, you're going to have to figure out how you curb excessive materialism in the world, but it's best to start it with your own life. And don't waste any time and don't waste any money, because it's hard to come by for somebody.
Let's give that young man a round of applause for that question. Ambassador, before we let you go briefly, can we just ask you for any final thoughts that you would like to share with these students today? I mean, you've given them a pretty good challenge about how to change they think about themselves and what they should do. How do they do that? I mean, how do you change your thinking about materialism?
Well, I think that you change your thinking about materialism by, first of all, remembering that your grandparents, very few of us are more than 2 generations out of poverty. And almost none of us got out of poverty on our own. Somebody helped us. Somebody educated my grandparents. And because somebody else educated my grandparents, my parents were educated, and they had to force an education on me because I didn't appreciate it. I took it for granted. And we can't afford to take it for granted, because an education is a precious investment that you have to use to make the world a better place for people in the future. There was one young lady who mentioned her question, and it was, how can we change the image and attitude toward America? Because right now we have an image as a culture and a country that has money to throw away. And one of the things that Jimmy Carter did as President of the United States, and he knew that he was President of the United States largely because of his following in the footsteps of Martin Luther King, and he even got an honorary degree from here at Morehouse College. And he asked me to go to the United Nations, and the first thing he said to me was, I want you to go to as many African countries as possible and ask them what they expect of the United States. I don't think Americans normally go around the world asking opinions. But he sent his wife to Latin America, the Secretary of State went to Europe, the Vice President went to Asia, and we listened to the world. And the very fact that we showed the world enough respect to listen to them and find out their opinions, I think that was one of the reasons why Jimmy Carter was able to be President of the United States for 4 years, and he didn't kill anybody, and he didn't get any Americans killed. And yet we had a peace treaty between Egypt and Israel. We started the process of independence of South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia. We worked out a treaty with the people of Panama and the Panama Canal. We ended the proliferation of nuclear weapons with the Russians. We brought the Chinese back into the United Nations with the Vietnamese. And the world was a better place because we had a president who looked at the world respectfully and did not approach them with violence or with a hostile attitude.
Well, Ambassador, the world is also a better place because you're in it. We'd like to give you a round of applause for dropping that knowledge on us today. Thank you so much. And like some folks say, he dropped some knowledge on us just now. I mean, he really did. I mean, it hit like that. So I hope you got something from it because you don't get to hear these kind of things that often. And we also kind of take Ambassador Young for granted because he's here in Atlanta. But folks around the world know who he is, so recognize who was here with us today. All right, joining us now is a spoken word artist, Daryl Edwards, performing a piece that focuses on materialism. Did I pronounce your name right?
Yes.
Oh, thank you.
I was given wings to fly away from this fake American dream of growing up into an American gangster, blocking this art of storytelling with project dreams, the mind frame of living in the white man's world. The people of today finding forever together once the global dream of Dr. King to reach the sky with the almighty high of success. Using my wings to conquer this inspiration, I have to inquire a desire of the future problems of the 21st century. Saving a violent world, turning it into a place learned to eradicate within first, refusing to deal with thing-oriented society and switching to a people-oriented one, playing your cards right, having the motivation to reach the American dream of the Worldhouse and considering where do we go from here.
Amen. We're going to be talking about that. Where do we go from here? But that's an interesting challenge, okay? Now, earlier this year at Morehouse, the student body was issued a challenge to write an essay that critically examines character, civility, and community based on Dr. King's works. 3 essays stood out from all of them, each reflecting in its own way the same sense of urgency that Dr. King had in his writings. During the last 2 weeks, our first and second place winners shared excerpts of their winning essays. This week, we are once again treated to an excerpt from our third place winner, Donovan Ramsey. Donovan's at the podium. Let's give him a round of applause.
Thank you. I believe that the best summation of Dr. King's teachings is the Worldhouse chapter from his book, Where Do We Go From Here? Chaos or Community. With the challenges facing the world today, considering the global community as a world house is perhaps the truest application of both character and civility. Our society is plagued with troubles, issues that could be catastrophic for following generations. Decades after the onslaught of HIV and AIDS, people are still fighting for their lives without a cure. The threat of terrorism in the U.S. and abroad has created a chasm between nations and precipitated violence throughout the world. The dangers of global warming are drastically affecting the way of life of people from the Arctic to the Gulf Coast of America. The list goes on, and the troubles that we face are tremendous. They are in some cases unprecedented, but there is hope. There is hope in the reconciliation of our fractured world house, but our conundrum is that, as Dr. King stated, we've inherited a large house, a great world house, one in which we must live together, black and white, Easterner and Westerner, Jew and Gentile, Catholic and Protestant, Muslim and Hindu, a family unduly separated in ideas, culture, and interests, who, because we can never again live apart, must learn somehow to live with each other in peace. The aim of our peaceful coexistence is a challenge to everyone in this world house. In times of heightened hostility, our differences appear as insurmountable obstacles in the path of progress, but in reality they are no more than opportunities. They are opportunities for individuals to exercise the privilege of our humanity and grow to unseen heights of brotherhood. The reunion of our world house will also require a resurrection of human will. It will mean a restored value for each person's life. In addition, the leadership of tomorrow also requires a spiritual renaissance, because we are bound by our problems to recognize that, deeply woven into the fiber of our religious tradition, is the conviction that men are made in the image of God, and that they are souls of infinite, metaphysical value. If we accept this as a profound fact, we cannot be content to see men hungry, to see men victimized with ill health when we have the means to help them. The hunger for peace and the thirst for freedom have always been present in the hearts of mankind. But the leaders of tomorrow must recognize, as Dr. King has shown, that the use of civil means has been and will continue to be the only course towards civil ends. We are obligated by our mutuality to respect each other in the face of nuclear weapons, to respect each other in the face of global terrorism, religious extremism, and political division. The path of civility takes great character, and through individual acts of humanity, the chasm that we must cross becomes smaller. Through caring for our fellow members of the Worldhouse, we are ensuring not only our humanity, but the world. We will remember that Dr. King was able to effect great change because he was change. He produced love because he was love. And when justice was denied to a great many citizens of this nation, he did something that we all can do. He resisted. In these times of challenge and change, we are given an opportunity. We are given the opportunity to heal our Worldhouse through service, civility, and love. Thank you.
All right. Donovan, let me ask you a quick question. What year are you here at Morehouse?
I'm a junior here at Morehouse College.
Do you hear that, high school students? He's a junior at Morehouse, but he wrote an essay that sounded like the Declaration of Independence. He's a tremendous writer. You can do it yourself. Give him another round of applause. I'm going to ask you a question. Can you write an essay like that? Yes, you can. Say it. Can you write an essay like that? Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay. Now, Donovan, a quick question for you. I know before this assignment, you were captivated by another civil rights icon. Tell us about that and the conclusions that you made as you were writing this essay, because we all learn from assignments.
Absolutely. I actually came to Morehouse College more as a devotee of Malcolm X, and I think that having the challenge to actually read the works of Dr. King and to be able to kind of compose an essay about them gave me the opportunity to really become more endeared to his legacy.
So you have new respect for Dr. King now?
Absolutely. Always had the respect there, but I think that with the reading and with the actual knowledge comes an understanding that I didn't have before.
And you know, I can agree with you. I was a young man coming up on Malcolm X. You know, hey, we gotta do this.
It's necessary, right?
Yeah, and then you look up, and ironically, both of them were assassinated at the same age, the age of 39. They were both gone. But you look at the legacy of both of them, and they accomplished quite a bit. But yet, you would have to say that Dr. King probably accomplished just a little bit more.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you again, Donovan. Let's give him another round of applause. All right. Now I get to take off my host hat and get back in the audience for a while as I hand it over to a young woman who's going to take this global webcast to the next level. Most of you hear her voice here in Atlanta on Hot 107.9. She's the host of the A-Team Morning Show and is one of only 3 women in the country leading a hip-hop and R&B morning show. Young people, old people, medium people, welcome to the stage. Help me welcome to the stage Rashawn Ali. Rashawn.
Thank you so much for having me. It is definitely a pleasure to be a part of such a great event. I can't believe I'm all across the world right now. So you get a chance to host so many different events, and it's great that we can come out here today and share this together. The next 30 minutes, we are going to listen to some great people. We will have a panel. And first of all, I'd like to welcome our global partners across the world. This is a wonderful thing. So our panelists will take questions from some students here and across the world. So I would like to introduce our first panelist. She is the Executive Director of Hip Hop for Humanity, a nonprofit here in Atlanta that focuses on educational and health initiatives for at-risk youth. Please welcome the beautiful Judy Malden. Our next panelist is Michael Render, also known as Killer Mike. Born and raised in the ATL, signed with Grime Time Official as an African-American rapper. He's worked with Outkast and Organized Noise, and you'll hear his voice on the Adult Swim cartoon Frisco Dingo. Let's hear it for Killer Mike. Our last panelist has been the stylist behind celebrities like Halle Berry and Stevie Wonder, owner of the Oh My Nappy Hair Salon. Let's welcome Clark Atlanta University graduate Eric Blevins. And what we're going to do is take questions from our panelists, and we will actually take our first question in just a moment. Are we set up? Please, a round of applause for our panelists one more time. If we could have our students who already have their questions to approach the microphone at this time. Don't be scared. Who's up first?
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Roy Quinn.
Speak up, baby.
My name is Roy Quinn. I'm from Miller's Preparatory Academy for boys. My question is, do you think the percentage rate of community chaos is coming up because of our youth, or has global community percentage rate came up because of our youth?
I think, I don't, you're saying has the rates of chaos went up globally, or what do you, I don't really understand the question.
Has the percentage rate of global chaos came up because of our hip-hop generation, because of our youth?
Oh, okay, I'll start that one off. How y'all doing this morning? How y'all doing? I'm professionally known as Killer Mike. I'm Michael Render. They left a few things off my bio. I was a Morehouse student. I came to Morehouse, and I say that just to say, I grew up in Adamsville, which is about 7 minutes from here, and it's a poor and working class neighborhood, and I came to Morehouse because a teacher told me I couldn't. And the teacher told me because I grew up on Martin Luther King that I didn't deserve to go to the college that Martin Luther King went to. So I decided that day that I was going to prove that teacher wrong. So that's what I feel like accreditates me more than just, you know, hey, we got Mike here, he's from a few doors down. I wanted to say, be careful, hip-hop generation, in how you let people label you. Be careful to understand that the music that you're listening to is a part of a bigger movement. The music that you listen to is only the music. After the quote-unquote death of the civil rights movement and after the quote-unquote fall of the black nationalist movement, you had a bunch of kids who were sitting around with talent, with desire, and with passion and no direction for it. You had a huge gang problem in the late 60s, early 70s that was happening in New York. And you had a small group of black, Latin, and working class white kids who decided to take their talents, which was b-boying, dancing, graffiti, breakdance, and rapping, and organize and use that as a tool to mobilize the community for a more positive direction. Now, I say that to say that hip-hop in itself is not just music. And if you only look at hip-hop as music, then you approach it from a position of powerlessness. Because all you do is buy music, essentially making you a customer. My argument is that hip-hop is an active agent of social change in the community led by young people. When you see black kids running around wearing skulls and True Religion jeans, that's because you responded to that. And you decided that that should be in the place when you bought that record. And when you did that, you affected the world. I believe that young people who believe in hip-hop, who support hip-hop, are wise and intelligent people. I believe they're insightful, and I believe they're old enough to make conscious decisions on how to properly affect the world. I think that when things go good, oftentimes people take the credit for the good that you guys are doing. But when things go bad, that usually you're the first guys to be blamed for that. I think that the music that you listen to has affected the entire world. I've been on over 4 continents. I've been to over 30, 40 countries. And everywhere I go, I see an NWA T-shirt. I see an Ice Cube T-shirt. I see a Public Enemy T-shirt. And I see a Tupac T-shirt. It's significant that you see those groups because all those groups spoke truth to power. All of those groups spoke forth purposeful and social change in their music. But yet when people think about your music, they only think about dance steps or making it rain or half-naked women. I don't believe that young people or the music they listen to has been the detriment on the world that we've been led to believe. I think that the materialism that hip-hop is accused of promoting is found in our churches. I believe it's found in government spending. I believe it's found in wasteful spending in schools in which parents are now having to take their kids out of public schools because the money is not used properly. I'm tired of seeing school boards on television making far bigger embarrassments. When you look at a school system, like the school system we have just south here in Atlanta, and you say, well, why are kids joining gangs and why are kids harboring weapons of violence in school? And then you look at a school board meeting and the same adults who are college educated and degrees are acting foolishly, then you understand the root of the problem is not in the youth. Because the youth are not the roots. The root of the problem came before you. Now, once you recognize the cancer, you are obligated to cut it off. And the cancer that I'm talking about is black education is only validated through materialism. If you don't believe me, the next time you see a black civil rights, the next time you see a new progressive black leader in a black magazine, pay close attention to the props that are put behind him. Why are black ministers forced to take pictures with Bentleys and airplanes? Why are black businessmen forced to wear diamonds and chains to prove their worth and validate their worth to you? You all have to change the perception of success in our community. You all have to decide that success does not come with a pair of Cartier glasses, a Brooks Brothers suit, nice shoes, nor does it come with a Lexus, a gold chain, and a video, honey.
Mike, we got to move on to the next question.
Oh.
One more.
So basically...
Well, that was so excellent.
Basically, no, I do not believe youth are the cause of the growth of global chaos. I believe that greed by adults is the cause of growth of global chaos.
Amen. Hold on just one second. We're actually going to go to South Africa with a question there. Great. Man, I love you. Great answer. We have a question. Okay, in Florida, we're going to pitch it down to Florida. Okay.
Okay. I actually kind of wanted to just follow up on the other comment, and I don't know if it's really a question or just a way to open up the discussion, but I was starting to think about the way hip-hop has been commodified, and Killer Mike starts talking about how hip-hop culture has been a force of social change and a space for radical thought within black and Latino communities. And I'm thinking a lot about how Dr. King's radical message also has become a commodity worldwide, and wanted to see if anyone had any observations on the fact that you can see Dr. King, McDonald's is selling the King legacy, or King has become a thing. And I wanted to just discuss the idea, if we're talking about materialism and consumerism and commodification of concepts, I'm very concerned about the ways in which certain kinds of radical ideas become commodified by the U.S. So, any thoughts or comments on that?
Well, hi everybody. Good morning. My name is Judy Malden, and what I see is happening here is not necessarily a commodity of radical thinking. What's happening is it's about exposure. It's about getting Dr. King's message out by any means necessary. And for whatever reason, our young people today do not read more about what's going on with Dr. King and in our history particularly. So if you go to McDonald's and get a cup, and on the side of the cup there's something that talks about Dr. King, for whatever reason, that's how people feel they have to market and connect to the youth. That's my idea of what's going on. I don't necessarily agree with it. I think it's unfortunate. If we could pick up a book and spend more time in the library, then kids could certainly retain more information about what's going on around them. But again, I think it's totally about marketing and exposure and trying to get the message out by any means necessary.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that. Now we have one of our Morehouse students. Or high school? Okay. You look grown. It's good.
How y'all doing? My name is Jamal Relaford. I'm a junior student at the Lovett School. My question is, do you think that the sources of media like BET, MTV, and their display of images and videos, do you think that these things influence the impact that materialism has in the community?
I'll speak on that. I'm Erica Blevins. Thanks. I'm honored to be here. Actually, my thoughts with that are that, yes, there is influence. I mean, it kind of connects back to what Mike was saying. You still have to be careful on what defines you. You have to make sure your mindset is solid in what you see yourself as, instead of letting images on TV and, you know, MTV and BET, things like that, tell you who you are. But yes, does it have an influence? I feel like there is a such thing as environment dictating or being influential, but we have to ultimately, as people who want to project ourselves in a certain light, we have to know who we are and who we want to, you know, be seen as, and keep that in mind.
Well, let me ask you this, Erica. For those young people that don't have that parental influence in their home and can't tell the difference, they can't decipher what is real and what is not because no one is telling them the difference, what type of advice would you give to children that experience that?
As far as children who
Well,
don't have someone telling them you should be this or you should be
Well,
that.
exactly. I mean, a lot of times our youth, we're raised by BET and MTV, and what we see is what we want to become, and sometimes we don't have the parental influence there to say, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. What would you say to a child who does not have that type of parental influence?
Ultimately, I don't know. I would just say that, you know, just what I said, you have to know how you want to be perceived, and understand what that means to be seen as the image that, you know, what does that equate in society, and what does that mean amongst the rest of the world, you know? I don't know if we should expect children to I don't know, and you guys can speak on that.
Yeah, I'd like to. You got to save yourself.
Right.
You get, and I say that not in an arrogant way. I say that because I decided to go to college at 17. I had a year to do it. My mother was addicted to drugs. I was being raised by my grandparents. My grandmother was post-secondary educated. My grandfather was not. Like going to Morehouse was as likely as me hitting a lotto. It wasn't supposed to happen. But it happened because someone challenged me and told me I couldn't. And it's not right and it's not fair that 14 and 15 and 16-year-olds are faced with adult responsibilities here, that you guys are faced with enormous pressure. But I'm going to tell you this. I've been around the world. And I can tell you there are places where 14 and 15-year-olds who would love to have the ability to be educated for free. There are places like Rio de Janeiro. There are places that are forgotten about in the depths of America. There are places in Europe where people are barely getting by. So you have a grand opportunity here in this country. And that opportunity is to be educated for free and to be emancipated through education. The only thing that is going to save our people, especially young black children, is over-educating yourself. Mm-hmm. If you do not over-educate yourself, you will most certainly be eradicated. It's not fair that a 16-year-old is responsible for the rest of his adult life. But if you are a black male and you're 16, you are officially an adult. You should act accordingly. You should take yourself and your life more seriously. And because I have daughters, for my young, beautiful black women out there here and globally, you must protect your health first. Your spirit and soul, unlike anyone else. Mm-hmm. You all are the highest climate, the highest in terms of climbing the charts in HIV, the lowest in terms of marriage. So it's up to you at 16 to decide the type of woman you're going to be. And to make sure that if a young man wants to engage in any type of relationship with you, he has to meet certain standards. And as a young man, you have to decide what you're going to be willing to and not to accept. One of my mentors is named Dr. Otis Smith. He was my pediatrician. He went to Morehouse when you had to pick tobacco to be here. And he told me, he said, Mike, the one luxury I would give myself is I would give myself a haircut. And all the other money I would save because I grew up in poverty. At 8 years old, he decided to be a doctor because he had saw his father die at the hands of a faulty doctor because of segregation. So I'm going to tell you, be you 14, 15, 16 years old, decide what you're going to do now. Decide that in your mind in regards to education and self-improvement, you as an adult as you're going to be, because there are children doing it in India. There are children doing it in Africa. There are children doing it in South America. And I dare you bring shame to your skin and not do the same thing.
Amen, brother. Thank you. We have a...
Hello. I just wanted to say one thing, tag on what I was saying, is that we have to also, as a society, hold each other accountable, you know, and I think that the ones who have that understanding of, you know, what Mike said, and you're saying how do we get children to understand that in their work, I think that as a whole we have to hold each other accountable, and, you know, when you see something, your peers or whatever doing something that's not in alignment with what we're talking about, then that should be out. You should outspeak on that, you know.
Thank you very much. We're actually going to go to...
Can I just briefly say something? Because I want to make sure the young man's question was asked. When you talk about BET, Viacom, those are media, they're all owned by Viacom, which is a media giant. It's a business. So the first thing you have to understand is it's a business. So when you watch TV, if you're influenced by media, it's important, as Mike said, to get education, because you have to know within yourself what is right and what's wrong. You have to know that they are marketing to you. It is a business. That's really the bottom line. It's a business to make money.
Thank you. We're going to send it to South Africa. Can you guys hear us in South Africa? South Africa, can you hear us? All right, let's kick it down to Florida then, to get a question from our audience there. Florida? Florida's ready. Ready to go.
Ready? Okay.
Yes, right.
Hi, everyone. I have a comment, I suppose more than a question, but just in thinking about where do we go from here and how we get to a people-oriented society, I think, particularly in the U.S., and thinking about poverty and racism, I think in order to really move forward and become a world community, we need to really think about reconciliation and public acknowledgement of the history of injustice in this country, and I don't think that really happens in schools. So, you know, we're talking about children really being able to learn and know, but if they're not learning the stuff that they need to learn in our schools and the public school systems, then they're not going to be armed with that information, because they're learning stuff that doesn't give our black kids their histories and knowledge. And so there needs to be a real, I think, a real global, but also particularly in the U.S., a real acknowledgement of a long history of injustice and dealing with issues of racism, sexism, homophobia, and these things, all of the systems of domination and oppression that affect us. And I think that, you know, particularly in high schools and elementary schools, we need that information, and it starts with history and a better version and a more accurate and fuller picture of the history of what it means to be a black person in this country, but also around the world. So if anyone has any other thoughts about that, particularly because I think that that will affect the quote-unquote hip-hop generation, because we need to be armed with that information and need to know stuff before we get out into the world.
Let me, since you're talking about education, let me just say this, it's important again. I think that you have to think about your surroundings and where you come from. We're relying a lot on the public school system to educate our kids. Unfortunately, our public school system sucks. It's absolutely the worst. There are alternative education programs. My organization, Hip Hop for Humanity, has recognized the fact that it's not working. Kids now are being educated the same way that I was educated. I'm a grandmother. So when I was educated many years ago, I had people around me. I didn't rely on just the books, but thank God I had a village to raise me. I had my grandparents, I had my great-grandparents, I had my aunts and my uncles, I had cousins. I worked when I was 13 years old. I worked, I put myself through school. It wasn't as if I came from a poor working-class family. I came from a suburban family. But I knew I had to work, and I had work ethics. In terms of learning, I didn't rely on just the school teacher or going to school and they're giving me lessons and learning. I learned outside. I'd go to the library. I would experience things. I would go to the museum. I would learn about my culture. My sister, because of age difference, was a Black Panther in the 60s, and I was a young girl. So her influence had me in a pretty much militant mindset that I was going to learn whatever I could learn. I was thirsty. I wanted to know everybody's culture. When I went out and I met somebody, I wanted to know more about them and their world. And I think it's important that you can't just go to school and accept the education that you get there in school. You have to live in this world. Therefore, you have to go out in this world and be resourceful. Don't rely on just TV. Don't rely on just what you see in school. Go out there. There's a lot of information. We have museums. You have the internet. There's so much information that you can get to educate yourself, and it's so important because we are a global community, and you have to be thirsty for knowledge. You have to be thirsty. You can't just settle.
Thank you, Judy. We're going to try to go back to South Africa. South Africa, can you hear us?
Good afternoon. I can hear you.
Oh, great.
Good afternoon. My name is Chris Landsberg from South Africa, Johannesburg. I would like to just make a point, and I would appreciate if our panelists could respond. I wonder if you, in America, in spite of all the challenges and hassles you face, appreciate how black youth throughout the world actually look up to you as Americans as role models. I know it's a daunting prospect, but I wonder if you appreciate that challenge, that sense of burden. The point I'm making, there's a desperate need for us as black people across the oceans to reach out more and build genuine partnerships, because that's only how we can overcome our plight.
Killer Mike, could you respond to that?
Yes, I want to say, first of all, just, big, just a lot of love to the brothers and sisters down there in Johannesburg. Like, I'm going to say this to my brothers and sisters in South Africa and my brothers and sisters here. People have a vested interest in making sure you all never know each other.
Yes, yes.
I'm going to say this again for all the black children that are here and that are in Johannesburg. People have a vested interest in making sure you all never know each other. As black kids in America, you have been educated top tier. You have been exposed to everything that your quote-unquote oppressor has been exposed to. He had the opportunity, or had an opportunity to have a great education. You've had the same opportunities. They've had an opportunity to clean up their credit and go into business. You have the same opportunities. You have to take advantage of that, because here in America, you have the ability to form business relationships that will allow your community to flourish and prosper here, and at the same time help a community flourish and prosper across the world. Now listen to me, because I'm talking about some real game. I'm not up here talking no lame talk or no square talk, because that's not what I came here for. So give me your undivided attention, and I'm going to give you undivided game for free, because I didn't charge to be here. When you go to Starbucks, and who goes to Starbucks? You buy coffee. You pay $4 or $5 for a cup of coffee. The beans for that coffee are grown in Kenya. The beans for $4 and $5 coffee are grown in Kenya. Yet black people aren't importing those beans. You look like the people the beans get bought from. Yet you never take trips to Kenya to buy beans to sell to Starbucks. You've been cut out of the loop of the best business plug you ever had. Black people have for too long sat around and talked about what we didn't have, and we never paid attention to the fact that the entire world was watching us. If you wear Jordans, children in Africa wear Jordans. If you wear gold chains, and I performed in Kyrgyzstan last year, your white kids in Kyrgyzstan wear gold chains. If you all decide to be better business people, then the rest of the world is going to make the same decision. Blacks here in America have the responsibility to lead black people globally, because our suffering and oppression has given us the grand opportunity. You have been raised in the house of the Pharaoh. You have had the ability to eat the Pharaoh's food.
Now you have the responsibility to get up and say, economically, let my people go. We're going to buy Kenyan coffee, but it's going to be from the Kenyan coffee shop. You have to open the Kenyan coffee shop. You have to stop being customers and start being competitors. You have to compete with the people you complain about globally. You have to tell your parents when you graduate, I don't want to go to Jamaica, I want to go to Africa. You have the responsibility to build a connection with someone else in Africa and to start a business and to import and to export and to build your community here. That's the only way as a global community we will ever thrive. I want to thank the brother in Johannesburg for the question. I hope that the young people in this room will not only be quote-unquote good hustlers, making a lot of money in America through hip-hop, through self-motivated business endeavors. I hope that you will take a plane trip 3,000 or 4,000 miles away and invest in the country we were taken from.
Killer Mike, thank you so much. Since we lost communication with Johannesburg for a moment there, we would like to go back to Johannesburg to see if we have another question from one of the audience members there. Another question in South Africa, please. Do we have another question in South Africa?
We have two links. We have two links with South Africa. I think we've lost connection with one of the sites. Let me relate all of this back not only to Martin Luther King and his vision and role, but I would like to remind my colleagues there in America that on Monday here in South Africa, on the 27th of April, we will be celebrating the 14th year of our liberation, of our freedom. And we in South Africa we couldn't even think about celebrating our liberation and our freedom if it wasn't for the hard-won sacrifices and ultimate sacrifices of the likes of Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, and we have to reach out as black people. We know too much about other communities and we don't know enough about ourselves. What we owe them as a liberated people, as youngsters, is to now pick up the baton and fight for socio-economic liberation and mental liberation, just as they paid the price for our political freedom.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to send it down to Florida for a question there.
All right, hello?
Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Nicole, and I'm a junior at the University of Florida. And I have 2 ideas to share. First of all, I want to say hi to everyone over there in South Africa and Morehouse. One thing I wanted to say, it's like we're making a lot of excuses, like, oh, we have to make sure we know that it's a business, that Viacom and all this stuff are businesses. The thing about it is that there are so many black people in the world that are entrepreneurs who have a wealth. We're relying on other people to create these businesses for it. So if we're being represented negatively in the media, create our own Viacom, our own media outlets. Another thing, too, a lot of times, like, I'm sorry, I don't know the radio host name, the host. She said, like, what do you say to people that don't have the parental guidance, like BET or their parents and everything? This is a reality, and it's so easy to say to a child, oh, get your own identity. But to so many people, that is their identity. The problem is not with hip-hop, because that is an art, but no one is going to see that what's being put out in the mainstream. I'm not even going to, like, talk about the moral things or whatever. I'm just going to talk about, like, we're talking about materialism, for one. A lot of the people in the hip-hop community, you know, a lot of kids I know in my high school aspire to be rappers, and I think the wealth comes from that. But in the songs, it's not shared that underneath it all, that they're CEOs, how to do stocks and bonds, mutual funds. You know, they let the kids think that that's all from that wealth. It's all from the actual videos and everything. And one more thing, too, about our education system. Another thing, too, is don't rely on just the education that you have. That's another thing that's easier said than done. For a lot of parents, being a good parent, especially in the ghettos or in any poor neighborhoods, regardless of race, being a good parent is food and clothing. I was fortunate enough to have a mom who was not educated, but who invested money in PBS documentaries and things, but not everybody has that opportunity. So, I mean, there's things that I learned in college that I would have never known. I didn't know that blacks were here before the Pilgrims, that there was a slave who boxed himself to freedom. I didn't know any of that. So, and even on like a long time ago, I saw on a PBS special, a lady asked a 12-year-old kid, what did Martin Luther King do for us? And he honestly answered that he freed us from slavery. And I mean, that makes a lot of sense because in schools, our black history is slavery and then Martin Luther King. So I think we need to take charge of our own destinies and stop relying on other people. It's a business. Then create our own media outlets.
Thank you for your comment in Florida. And just want to remind everyone that we're just having a little bit of technical difficulties with our, our global cast to South Africa. Just a little bit of technical difficulties, so we definitely appreciate your patience in that. But we are definitely connected, even though we can't see you. All right? We're going to bring it back here to Morehouse for a question from one of our audience members here.
I'm Malachi Garcia, senior at the Lovett School. And this question is primarily for Killer Mike. In the song That's Life, you tackled many issues, and you expressed a discontent with black professionals like preachers, doctors, and lawyers, and their lack of presence and influence in the black community. Could you elaborate on that, and what do you feel its impact is on the youth?
First of all, I just want to start by saying I love all black people. It doesn't make a difference to me. I love them. I love them. I love Obama to Clarence Thomas. You know, I love Sheila Jackson Lee with the same fever that I love Condoleezza Rice. I love and am absolutely in love with black people. I don't think that there was nothing made better. I don't think it's sugar sweeter. And with that, I reserve the right to address situations with people I love. And in the black community, we have a problem with classism that we don't want people to know about. We have this side of Cascade where the projects and the colleges are, and we have another side of Cascade where the houses and the stores are. And those two cascades don't often meet. And what I mean by that is we often use the analogy with ourselves that we're crabs in a bucket, and that we can never get out of the bucket because the crab pulls us down. But nobody ever talks about the few crabs that are around the top that are being held there by a hand. And at any time that hand could let them go, and they fear is they might fall back into that bucket. Now, it doesn't matter what these people have or don't have. You can be a crab with $1 billion, or you could be a crab with $1 million. You could be a crab with your own TV show, or you could be a crab just standing around at a liquor store doing nothing. So I hold rich blacks accountable in the same way that I hold poor blacks. And with that, what I mean is, if you're going to criticize poor black people for not valuing or caring about education, then I must criticize you for only giving money to post-secondary education and not investing in where we know education truly works. The great communist Karl Marx said that if you give me a child before 5 years old and allow me to train him, I'm going to give you a communist. So does it make more sense to put $50 million into a historically black college, which I'm a proponent for, I'm with it. I went to Morehouse. We needed that money. We didn't have hot water sometimes. Or does it make more sense to put $50 million into educating kindergartners? J. Edgar Hoover said what made the Black Panthers so dangerous wasn't the guns, it wasn't the leather jackets, it wasn't the berets, it was the fact that they fed black children. Because whoever feeds a child in the morning is going to be the person that leaves the child in the evening. So if we're putting money constantly into children who've made it against insurmountable odds, the few blacks that managed to make it into college, and when I say few, I mean a great many few, you all have beaten insurmountable odds. But those odds are more beatable if dollars are put to you younger. So I take reservation with criticizing poor blacks, when as rich or elitist blacks, you don't put $50 million into poor black communities and make sure, like W.D.B. Du Bois said, we have a talented 10th. When you only make sure your talented 10th comes out of a certain class, then you're doing basically you're sabotaging the race. If you make sure that only a limited group of people who've managed to be educated only these people will continue to be educated, then you cripple your race. And as a rapper, how could I not talk about that?
Right.
When you are the most recognized black woman in the world, and you wear hazel contacts, does it really matter if you do a book signing on the bluest eye by Toni Morrison? Because it seems you suffer from the symptoms. And that's no personal attack on anyone. That's just saying, I'm not a chump because I'm poor, so don't send me a mixed message. The reason drug dealers wear Coogi sweaters is because we saw them on the Cosby Show. And by the time Dr. Cosby decided to start wearing Morehouse and Temple sweatshirts, it was too late. We were infected with the virus of Coogi sweaters. By the drug dealers started selling drugs in the late 80s to buy Jordans. When is the last time you heard Michael Jordan make a grand political statement on your behalf? When is the last time the price of Jordans went down for Black History Month? I can tell you personally how many friends have died behind Jordans. Someone asked me, Mike, how do you feel about Nike being bootleg? It hurts the company. I called it corporate karma. Because I saw black boys die for Michael Jordan. Now, as a basketball player, I will argue with anyone in the world. That is the greatest basketball player I've ever seen. But when you want to talk about a basketball player and an advocate, then we're going to have to talk about Bill Russell. So what I'm saying is maybe you should stop looking at chumps. Because a chump has $1 billion, what does that mean to you? They never going to show up at your door and give you any money. They never going to do better by your schools. They never going to respect your music. What do you keep supporting them for? I don't care what color they are. And don't forget, I love black people. So what I'm saying is, and what I'm saying to rich blacks is, if you're going to stand on hill on high, and when you stand on hill on high, if you choose to look over in them fields, because my bloodline is cotton picker, when you choose to look at them fields and throw a harsh criticism over into them workers, you better believe they got somebody that's going to yell back.
That's right, Mike.
When you say the house kind of hot, boss, I'm going to say light the fire.
Light the fire.
So I'm going to give you that. As black people, we have to stand up even against our own people in protection of our greater masses, our people that are suffering. That's why I talk to black elitists like y'all got to do better.
All right. Great job, always. Incredible. Incredible. We're going to send it back to Florida now. Go right ahead.
Good morning. My name is Felicia from Department of Anthropology here at Florida, University of Florida. I think that the last two people that spoke, asked questions or made comments have kind of led me, cleared the way for what I would like to do, which is to continue to ask, then what do we do? And I'd like to speak from my experience as a community organizer in Chicago, where I spent about 8 years, 9 years, totally forgetting about myself in terms of furthering my education, protecting my credit cards. And what I did was try to get people of African descent, and that is Africans, Caribbeans, African Americans. I tried to organize the women so we can start from finding out the answer to the question about who are we, because you cannot find a battle when your feet are up in the air. You have to have your feet planted solidly on the ground before you can fight a battle. And fighting that battle means asking questions and then getting the right answers. My perception of the situation, and I spent about 8 years trying to do this, and I got tired. I was totally messed up and wrecked, my credit cards, everything working for the community. And when I got tired of it, I moved to Atlanta, where I spent another 8 years hiding away from the community for a while. And I will tell you the reason I hid away from the community. It is because when we get together to articulate this problem, we are very eloquent. We do so well. We are gifted. And I'm talking about both black people and white people who work with us sometimes. We are very good at articulating the problem.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
But when you call people to action, what we saw with Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and all those leaders who were so selfless in their sacrifice, what we saw them do is so lacking today. Because I had another woman who was organizing community, but her thing was having parties, fashion parades, and things like that. Whenever she had an event, it was standing room only. But when I got...
Ma'am, if we could get you to ask your question, please.
Vaudevillian Parade.
Oh, nice.
And I went and read up on it. Vaudevillian Parade is big.
Ma'am, if we can get you to ask your question, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but if we can get you to ask your question because we have to send it back to South Africa so they can get their question in as well.
Action, we are totally lacking. When you call people to come, let's talk about these things, find solutions, and maybe confront the institutional structures that perpetuate these conditions we talk about. People fade out. So I'm just trying to link us back to the materialism we're talking about. If it's going to profit them personally, if it's going to give them money, if it's going to give them power or personal recognition, we show up. When it comes to being as selfless as Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, we disappear. So that is the problem that we have to address. Why do we have so much apathy to action? That is what we don't have. We are very apathetic to taking action, doing what we need to do, forgetting about being cowards, and confronting.
Thank you very much for your comment. We definitely appreciate that. We're going to send it to South Africa now for their question. South Africa, can you hear us? Okay. South Africa? South Africa? All right. Well, thank you, everyone, for all of your questions and comments on for our panelists today. Please give them another round of applause. We want to say thanks to Miss Judy Malden, also Killer Mike, and Erica Blevins, and all of your great questions. And thank you so much for allowing me to serve as your moderator for this portion of the program.
Let's give them all another round of applause. Great job, great job. Killer Mike, I could hang out with you. I mean, you know, we get in trouble together, but I could definitely hang out with you. I hear where you're coming from. Great comments. But we will also remind you that the comments that you heard today from Killer Mike are his own opinion. and though we might agree with them, they do not represent the philosophy of Morehouse College. But let's give them all another round of applause.
They do represent the philosophy of Dr. King.
Amen. Amen and hallelujah. And also, Rashawn, another round of applause for the great job she did with it. Say again? And now we want to bring up a performer, our final performer of the evening. Jabez, are you here? I'm sorry. Tell me your complete name. Jabez Shakur. I'm sorry, I didn't have that page in front of me. Let's give a round of applause for Jabez Shakur.
The limitations of the human creature. Father, what is my next move? I see clouds are they pinnacle steps to destiny. My body's tired, but my spirit is illuminated, and I'm impregnated with the word from God. Will I make it to deliver this baby? A gentle inner voice is calling, but my ability to hear is determining how much I can receive. Vibrations of glory. I hear languages which I've never heard before. I begin to speak the languages I hear. My head stuck to paper. The inner voice appeared. What is it, Martin Luther, that you appeared? Well, it's them hellish thoughts that I dreamed of never being who I was created to be. The thoughts of hearing, seeing, and smelling, but never embracing my destiny. To be given eternal life, But somewhere along Earth's journey, my calling seemed shattered. Only if I could clench the beauty of my new home, to be able to look into the eyes of my maker and not die, to spread my angelic wings across the ocean and fly, to go from the visible to the unseen, to smile and not cry on Judgment Day, because the deeds done in my body will appear on screen. You are an ancient spirit, but my flesh only gives me credit for being 22 years old. One eye says I'm struggling, while this other eye says I've got it under control. To come to you indeed and you lie to me is as worthless as a fruitless tree to a starving man on a long journey. Never thought I was gonna suffer like this. Being homeless a show make you appreciate a bed at night to toss and twist. Cause see, poetry is the altar where I pour my frustrations, my anger, and my lust. Cause see, real poetry comes from the spirit of a man's heart crushed. Just thought I'd show you a few features. Worldhouse, with just the limitation of a human creature.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. That was really incredible. And it goes in keeping with everything else we've heard today. There's so many different pieces to this story as we try to build the Worldhouse, and it's so glad to have them all come together. We should also acknowledge again Dr. Joycelyn Wilson, the Executive Director of Hip Hop 2020 Curriculum Project. Stand up. Stand up in the house. There you go. She was very instrumental in bringing this whole thing together, but also getting us Clifford Harris, the rap artist you know as T.I., who was speaking yesterday and also was in our audience today. So our thanks to him as well. Let's give him a round of applause, even though he's not with us right now. What a rich global experience that this has been, from the creative cultural expressions to the scholarly exchanges. But where do you ask, do we go from here? That question's been posed several times. Well, the same option that Dr. King put before us in 1968 is before us again today. The choice between chaos and community. Today, we chose community. Let's say that together. Today, we chose community. Now, before we wrap up this week's Global Webcast, let's thank our partners from across the globe. Again, to our partners at the University of Florida Digital Worlds Institute, we thank you for your solidarity and partnership as we begin to virtually build Dr. King's Worldhouse. Let's give them a round of applause for them. And it was great, even though we had our little internet connection problems, but the possibilities are so unlimited to be able to connect with our brothers and sisters across the globe in South Africa. Let's give a round of applause for our friends at South Africa and Johannesburg. Thank you for being with us. And before I wrap up, we want to also have special appreciation to the folks who have been working to make this thing happen, to tie all the knots together. And believe me, it took some time, because these things don't just happen. It takes planning, it takes execution, and sometimes the things you plan don't go the way you plan. But that's why we call it live, L-I-V-E. If you take live backwards, it's evil, but we won't say that. We'll just say it was a live performance and we had fun doing it. Special appreciation to the production crew, the Morehouse College Office of Communications, the Division of Humanities and Social Science, of course our friends at the University of Florida Digital Worlds Institute, Mathis Video Productions, the brothers you see running the cameras, who are one of the reasons why we could see anything here, CTG, who did a lot of the technical connections, our sponsors again, IACOM and Hewlett-Packard, and last but not least, the Morehouse Office of Information Technology. Let's give those hard workers a round of applause. And finally, once again, to all the speakers, performers, students, and audience members here at Morehouse College in Atlanta, Georgia, we'd like to thank you for your patience, for your presence, and your time, and your participation, because you truly made the Worldhouse come together. Give yourselves a round of applause one more time. Once again, my name's Ray Montoya, and I'd like to thank you for being with us again, and I can't wait until the next time we are together in the Worldhouse. Have a good one.